No one thrills you like Universal Studios, where you go face-to-face with 3 tons of relentless terror in the all-new, all-out attack of Jaws. Battle a rampaging Tyrannosaurus as you scream through time on Back to the Future, the greatest ride in history. Survive a nerve-shattering 8.3 earthquake, then take on King Kong's 50 feet of howling, growling fury. For more spine-tingling action on land, sea, and in the air, the only place to go is Universal Studios. No one thrills you like we do.
Welcome everyone to Destinations Disney and Universal, the channel where we discuss everything about the theme parks which made Orlando, Florida, one of the top vacation destinations in the world. Let's begin by returning to the decade which saw incredible growth for Disney World, the 1980s. By the time EPCOT opened in 1982, attendance for Disney World had reached 12.6 million. In the first year of EPCOT being opened, that number skyrocketed to 22.7 million visitors. Disney World's attendance numbers would continue to increase throughout the decade, reaching 33.7 million in 1990. So the question became, who would be brave enough to take on this juggernaut? Because by every estimation, Disney World was completely untouchable.
Hey, that's against the law. You're coming with me.
Can't touch me. Can't touch me. Judge.
Yet, an old rival of Walt Disney would rise to the challenge. Universal Pictures had grown immensely since the days when they effectively stole the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoon concept from Walt Disney. They had massive amounts of success with the opening of their backlot tram tour attraction in Hollywood, and were now preparing to take the fight to Disney by stepping right into their backyard in Orlando, Florida. In this episode of Destinations Discovery, we will look at the history and provide an overview of Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. Universal Studios Florida was the most ambitious project ever undertaken. The concept for the park dated back as early as 1982, and to assist with the incredibly high production costs, Universal sought out a sponsor. Universal approached Paramount, who was headed by, wait, really? This guy again? Yes, Michael Eisner. Anyways, the original concept was for the park to be a walking tour and tram tour experience, much like what Universal had already seen success with in Hollywood. However, Paramount and other potential sponsors feared that such a concept would never be able to compete against Disney World on their home turf. So Universal was forced to put the idea on the shelf, where it remained for the next 4 years. Once again, the House of Mouse was just untouchable. Oh no, not this again.
Can't touch me. Can't touch me.
However, a coincidence occurred which would change the theme park landscape in Orlando forever. In 1986, Steven Spielberg's college roommate Peter Alexander, who himself was a former Imagineer, was now working with Universal and designed a lifelike King Kong figure for the tram tour in Hollywood. Spielberg was so impressed with the figure that he asked Alexander to begin drawing up concept ideas for a Back to the Future ride. After riding Star Tours with his friend George Lucas, who bragged that nobody could ever create anything to compete with Star Tours, Spielberg pushed Universal to revisit the Orlando project, eventually signing on as the primary executive producer of the park. Following, oh wow, here we go again with this guy. Following Michael Eisner revealing his plans for Disney's new theme park, which just so happened to be very similar to the original Universal Park plans, which were pitched to Eisner when he worked for Paramount, Universal decided that the only way to take on the Disney World empire was to beat them at their own game. This meant a theme park with better rides, better attractions, and better shows. Universal had zero experience creating anything like this, and the cost to build the park was a staggering $630 million. Nevertheless, Spielberg and Universal pushed on, and Universal Studios Florida opened on June 7th of 1990. The layout of the park included 5 themed areas. First was Production Central. Back then, this truly was Production Central, as TV shows and movies were being produced in this part of the park. However, it also hosted some memorable attractions. Alfred Hitchcock, The Art of Making Movies, and Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater walked audiences step by step through the TV and movie making process. Nickelodeon Studios and the Production Tram Tour actually allowed guests to watch shows being recorded. What would you do? Double Dare and other classic Nickelodeon favorites were filmed here during what I consider to be the TV channel's golden age. The land also included a tour of the prop graveyard, where the original Jaws prop is displayed, and a motion simulator called the Futuristic World of Hanna-Barbera. None of these remain, as much of the land is currently occupied by the Rip Ride Rocket, aside from Hanna-Barbera, which was rethemed multiple times and is currently Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem. The next land was New York, which hosted 2 attractions. The Ghostbusters Spooktacular, which was an effects show which closed in 1996, to make room for Twister, which opened in 1998, and after a few rethemings due to bad reviews, was eventually replaced with Jimmy Fallon Race Through New York in 2015. The other ride in New York was a flagship ride of the park, Kongfrontation. This was the evolution of the King Kong experience on the Hollywood Tram Tour, now turned into a full-on attraction. The ride took guests through a 1976 New York subway station, inspired by the first King Kong remake of that same year, to Manhattan Island, which was currently under attack by King Kong. Real-life newscaster Roland Smith of WWOR-TV is covering the destruction caused by the beast as guests board a tram car in order to escape. This was an iconic ride and one that is fondly remembered to this day, as the animatronic technology was incredible for the time and would probably still hold up today. Kongfrontation would close in 2002 and be replaced by another iconic ride, Revenge of the Mummy. Next, guests would come to San Francisco/Amity, where two attractions awaited guests: Earthquake, the big one, and Jaws. Earthquake had a pre-show, which had guests selected from the audience participate in a reenactment of scenes from the hit 1974 movie of the same name. After the guests exit the pre-show, they board a tram vehicle which takes them to a subway, where they ride out an 8.3 magnitude earthquake. This ride closed in 2002 and would undergo multiple rethemings before being replaced with the current attraction, Fast and Furious Supercharged. Yes, I know, but as painful as it will be, I will suffer myself through covering this attraction later in this video. Guests on opening day could then maybe ride Jaws. I say maybe because this ride was known for issues. The ride saw guests touring the lagoon at Amityville in a boat captained by a skipper. All of a sudden, Jaws would attack the boat. The skipper would try desperately to get the guests away from the deadly great white. Finally, the skipper manages to kill the shark with a grenade launcher, and the guests return to the lagoon to exit the ride. Jaws would eventually close in 2012 to make room for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, specifically the Escape from Gringotts attraction. That was it, folks. That was all the rides and attractions present on opening day. There was incredible hype surrounding opening day, with major celebrities, mainly those featured in the films the attractions of the park were based on, being brought in to add to the excitement. The media was out in force, and the crowds came in droves. However, this was when the park almost ended before it began. Despite the best efforts of the design team, the attractions were simply not tested enough and not ready. Confrontation was closed almost all day. Jaws opened for 2 hours before it broke down, with Steven Spielberg and his family being stranded in the lagoon for most of the day. Spielberg filed a lawsuit against the company who constructed the attraction. Eventually, a new construction company was hired, and Jaws opened again 2 years later. The park was overcrowded, and the lines were outrageously long. Guest services were forced to refund tickets for anyone who asked. However, Universal would press on, earning itself the nickname of the little theme park that could. The E.T. adventure debuted on opening day, which was a smash hit with guests, and is the only opening day attraction still at the park. Then, Spielberg granted George Lucas when Back to the Future, the ride, opened in May of 1991. This ride completely put Star Tours to shame, becoming one of the most iconic motion simulator rides ever created. it would last until 2007, when the land around it was rethemed to Springfield and the ride itself was rethemed to the Simpsons ride, which operates at the park today. In order to compete with Disney World, Universal knew it had to turn into a full-on resort. With Disney World announcing the Animal Kingdom Park, which opened in 1998, Universal added Islands of Adventure, which was the most technologically advanced theme park in the world, in 1999. The new park sat next to Universal Studios. And Universal built a dining/nightclub area connecting the two parks, known as City Walk. All of a sudden, Disney World was no longer untouchable. In 2014, Universal announced an expansion to the parks. This expansion would finally cause the Universal Park to surpass a Disney World park in attendance numbers. Following a failed negotiation with Disney, where Harry Potter author and creator J.K. Rowling signed a letter of intent, but Disney insisted that Imagineers be given the lead on designing the area of the park, which would have been located in the Magic Kingdom. Wanting creative control herself, Rowling rescinded her letter of intent. Universal pounced, giving Rowling everything she asked for, including the lead in design. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter expansion would open in 2014. By the time the second part of the expansion was finished, it would encompass both theme parks. Universal would be home to Diagon Alley, and Islands of Adventure would be home to Hogsmeade, with a Hogwarts Express ride transporting guests to and from both locations. In 2019, Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure ranked as the 10th and 11th most visited theme parks in the world. A park which nearly fell apart on opening day has risen to become the incredible theme park we all know and love today. Speaking of today, let's take a walk through the park, highlighting some of the best rides and experiences. Universal Orlando Resort has one main entrance. Guests will arrive at a building over top of a parking garage. While here, guests can walk down a path or utilize one of the moving platforms in order to reach the security check. This area is very unique, and while it's not a more known icon of the park, it is at least worth mentioning in this video. After going through security, guests will arrive at City Walk. Going to your left will lead you to the Islands of Adventure, and going right will take you to Universal Studios. The first icon guests will notice is the famous Universal Globe. Mist sprays surround the globe, giving it an amazing visual effect as well as an awesome photo opportunity. Guests will then enter through the second park icon, the Universal Studios Archway. Behind the archway lies the main gate to the park. After passing through the main gate, guests will arrive in Production Central. As stated earlier, this used to be where TV shows and movies were filmed inside various sound stages. Occasionally, Professional wrestling shows from Impact Wrestling will be filmed here, but aside from that, there are no major film or TV productions going on at this time. However, this is where guests will find 4 attractions: Despicable Me Mini Mayhem, Shrek 4D, the Rip Ride Rocket Roller Coaster, and Transformers the Ride in 3D. Beginning with Despicable Me Mini Mayhem, this attraction is a motion simulator which sees guests becoming minions. The attraction has 2 pre-shows, both of which introduce known characters from the series. The story of the ride is that guests will be turned into minions, and the motion simulator sees guests going through a dangerous minion obstacle course. While this ride is very popular, always having long wait times, it is not an attraction I would personally ride again. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I just feel the 2 rides which preceded it, the Futuristic World of Hanna-Barbera and Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, were just overall better experiences. However, don't let my opinion stop you from going on this attraction, as it is one of the more popular rides in the park. Next to Despicable Me is Shrek in 4D. Shrek 4D opened in 2003 and replaced the Alfred Hitchcock The Art of Making Movies attraction. The attraction begins with a pre-show, which begins with the 3 little pigs, the gingerbread man, and Pinocchio revealing that Lord Farquaad has kidnapped them and is holding them in Castle Duloc's dungeon. The gingerbread man flees in the middle of the explanation. The magic mirror then begins to summarize the events of the first Shrek film. After the mirror finishes, Lord Farquaad appears and states that he intends to torture the fairy tale creatures, as well as the audience, in order to find Shrek and Fiona. The monitor screen later shows a test card with Lord Farquaad in the center. The mirror then warns the audience about safety as the theater doors open and guests enter the main showroom. The attraction takes place after the first Shrek film and sees guests try to rescue Fiona from the ghost of Lord Farquaad alongside Shrek, Donkey, and Dragon. The attraction is in 4D, thanks to the seats in the theater moving forward, backward, vibrating, and raising up or down to match with the film on screen. The attraction also uses lighting and traditional 3D effects to really immerse guests into the story and add to the fun. The ride ends with Farquaad being destroyed by Dragon's fiery breath after Dragon saves Shrek, Donkey, Fiona, and guests from falling down a waterfall. When this attraction first opened, it was great. However, on my last visit to the park, the age of the attraction was actually very noticeable. The animations in the pre-show were just not as vibrant, and the show itself did seem really aged. In its prime, this was a can't miss attraction. It is now possibly a skip. I say possibly because Universal has announced that the attraction will close in January of 2022. So, if you're going to go to Universal Studios before the end of the year, I would suggest riding this attraction before it is closed forever. The next ride in Production Central is the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. With Islands of Adventure having the Incredible Hulk and, before it was closed down, the Dueling Dragons coaster, it was decided that the Universal Studios park needed to have a coaster as well. So in 2008, Universal constructed this 167-foot tall steel coaster, which opened in 2009. The coaster sees guests take their seats and make a song selection from an on-ride music library of hit tracks across various categories of music, from rock and roll to hip-hop to country. It basically takes the sound system, which is used on Rock and Roller Coaster in Disney's Hollywood Studios, and improves upon it, making each seat play its own music, which can only be heard by that individual rider, and not the rider in the car in front of them, behind them, or next to them, giving each rider a truly unique experience. After the song selection is made, the coaster begins a 167-foot vertical climb. When the train reaches the top of the lift, it drops back to the ground, reaching a maximum speed of 65 miles per hour. The train then enters a non-inverting loop, nicknamed the double take, followed by an upward right turn into one of the several mid-course breaks. It then drops back down, going through a hole in the wall before entering a left upward helix section of the coaster, which is nicknamed the treble clef. Next, the train enters a quick element nicknamed the jump cut, which is a non-inverting corkscrew. This is followed by a large dip that takes the train into a second set of mid-course breaks. Following a small drop to the left, the track straightens for a moment before making a right turn, a left turn, and then another right, leading into the third set of mid-course breaks. An S-bend turn follows, which leads the train into an incline loop and a fourth set of brakes. Finally, the train drops once more, travels over a small hill, and then enters the final brake run as the song the rider selected at the beginning of the attraction ends. The 1.5 minute experience is a bit rough. It really does bang you around a lot, and after I got off it, I did need a minute in order to collect myself. That said, I think the music integration is unique and adds a lot to the coaster, because honestly, on the surface, this is just an average vertical lift and drop coaster. It's definitely not my favorite, but it does do enough to make me want to ride it again. If you're a fan of roller coasters, I would recommend riding this one at least once. The last ride in Production Central is Transformers the Ride in 3D. Originally, this was the site of Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater before it was rethemed to Hercules and Xena, Wizards of the Screen in 1997, before finally transforming tough crowd. Fine then, before becoming this attraction in 2013. If you're familiar with Spider-Man over in Islands of Adventure, then you will notice that this ride is almost an exact copy of that one, except for that it obviously tells a different story and has different theming. Nevertheless, just because it's a copy does not mean it isn't an incredible experience. The pre-show sees guests arriving at the Non-Biological Extraterrestrial Species Treaty, or NEST for short, base. A series of signs and video screens are located within this area. The video screens play briefings from General Morshower, Ironhide, Wheelie, and Ratchet, who explain that the Decepticons have come to Earth in search of the Allspark and are attacking the Nest base in order to recover the fragment that is stored there. Optimus Prime concludes the briefing by introducing all the Autobots which are featured in the ride. Towards the end of the queue, guests are given a pair of 3D glasses. Once guests arrive at the loading station, they are grouped and loaded into a ride vehicle modeled on an Autobot named EVAC, whose mission is to take the Allspark to safety with navigational help from a squad of Nest recruits. The ride begins with EVAC moving out of the loading station and making a turn. The vehicle approaches the first of 13 3D high-definition video screens, which depicts Ravage grabbing a canister containing the Allspark before reversing and turning to another 3D screen, which shows Megatron firing a missile at EVAC while continuing to fight Optimus. Hot air and fog generate the illusion of an explosion. EVAC then heads through a hole and smashing into some drums, which release clouds of fog, resulting in EVAC asking if the riders are okay. Optimus Prime and Megatron continue their battle in the construction site as EVAC reverses away in an attempt to protect, causing both to freefall when Megatron grabs EVAC. Bumblebee then saves EVAC from destruction while playing James Brown's I Feel Good before Optimus Prime congratulates EVAC and the riders on their mission. The last thing guests see before disembarking is a twisted wreckage of Megatron stuck in the ceiling near the exit. Again, it is the same ride concept as Spider-Man over at Islands of Adventure, but it is different enough to make this a must-ride attraction. The story and theming is excellent, and fans of the franchise will want to experience this one multiple times. I went on it twice in one day, and I honestly could have gone on it 2 or 3 more times. It's that good, and like I said, it's a must-ride on every visit to the park. The next area of the park which guests will come to is New York. The New York area features Jimmy Fallon Race Through New York, The Blues Brothers Live, and Revenge of the Mummy. The Jimmy Fallon attraction is a motion simulator where guests race the Tonight Show star through the streets of New York City. Trust me, it's not as good as it sounds. If not for the Fast and Furious Supercharged, this would be the worst attraction in the park. I mean, the queue is really cool, but that's honestly where the fun factor of the ride ends. If you want a motion simulator ride, there's an excellent one, way more worth your time, in another part of the park, which we will discuss later in this video. I guess if you're a fan of Jimmy Fallon, it might be worth your time, but if you're not, then this attraction is a skip. It replaced Twister Ride It Out, which also replaced the Ghostbusters Spooktacular, and honestly, as bad of reviews as Twister had, this ride is worse. Unfortunately, this is just one lineage of rides which got progressively worse over its generations. New York also hosts the Blues Brother Live Jazz Show, which is an iconic street show that has existed in the park since 1991. Before the show begins, the Blues Brothers drive around the park in their Bluesmobile and features title characters from the hit film. Then, the characters go to the stage and play a variety of songs from the movie. It is really fun, and I do suggest checking this one out if you happen to be in the New York section during one of the show times. The best attraction in this area of the park, and one of the most iconic attractions in the entire park, is Revenge of the Mummy. This is the ride which replaced Confrontation and is a very worthy replacement of that incredible classic attraction. The ride takes place inside the Museum of Antiquities. Brendan Fraser reprises his role from the movie as the queue changes into a 1940s archaeological dig site where guests descend to the second floor and board ride vehicles themed as mine carts. As the ride begins, the mine carts move into another room inside Imhotep's tomb, where Reggie, who was a Revenge of the Mummy crew member who went missing, is seen partly mummified and warns the riders, "Are you insane? Get out of here. The curse is real. This whole place is a trap. He is after your souls." But before Reggie can finish, Imhotep comes out of a sarcophagus, prompting Reggie to desperately instruct the riders to look for the Magi symbol. The cars next move into a second room where there is treasure on the left and right sides of the car. Light then appears across the room, revealing treasure all around the room. Soldier mummies appear in front of the treasure as he utters an Egyptian curse. The cart then quickly moves into another room where the minecart approaches the first launch and hits a wall, which causes scarab beetles to come pouring out. The cart launches backwards as a screaming sound effect is heard. The cart then drops into another room where it stops. Imhotep appears again on a screen, moving across the screen to the back of the room, while the ride vehicle turns 180 degrees to follow him. Imhotep warns, "Not even the Magi can save you now. There is no escape. Your end shall be my beginning. Behold your fate. Will this be your destiny?" Then, the ride moves through a second launch and catapults guests to 40 miles per hour, while Imhotep is heard shouting. The minecart then passes through Imhotep's skull and drops through various turns while speeding past projections of mummies and fire. The cart comes to a stop after this, and a female ride attendant appears behind a glass control booth and thanks them for riding. But Imhotep sucks out her soul, breaks the glass, and sets the ceiling on fire. The cart then hits the last launch, dropping down 39 feet, and goes down a winding drop until a Magi symbol appears. Then passengers travel through a tunnel of flickering lights with a screen in front of them. Rick O'Connell appears and tells the riders, "Hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I would have enjoyed this interview a lot more if I had gotten my cup of coffee." Then suddenly, a cape passes over the screen and Imhotep's arm offers Fraser a cup of coffee. As Fraser screams and falls back in his chair, the screen fades to black, while riders hear Imhotep's roaring over Fraser's screams, ending the ride. Describing the ride here just does not do it justice. It is a fun indoor coaster, which is an absolute must ride on every visit to the park. Amusement Today magazine awarded this attraction the Golden Ticket Award for Best Indoor Coaster 7 times, before finally retiring the category and awarding this ride legendary status. And this is well deserved, as this ride completely blows away its Disney World counterpart, Space Mountain, with better theming, better storytelling, and just a way more immersive experience. The next area of the park which guests will come to is San Francisco. San Francisco hosts another street show, Beat Builders. The show sees 4 construction workers who halt their progress on Universal's latest project in order to have a percussion show. It isn't as good as Blues Brothers, but it is still worth watching if you happen to be in the area while the show is taking place. San Francisco also hosts the best dining location in the park, Lombard's Seafood Grill. Located on a dock overseeing a lagoon, this restaurant opened with the park and has excellent seafood dishes. The atmosphere is calming, and there's seating outside overlooking the lagoon. The food is phenomenal, and this is a restaurant I would highly recommend eating at, especially if you enjoy seafood. Speaking of dining, I will say this about dining in Universal Orlando Resort. The food options inside the theme parks are really not worth it. Aside from Lombard's, obviously, and the 3 broomsticks in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which I will discuss when we get to that part of the park. But aside from those, my recommendation would be to eat at City Walk, because City Walk has great dining options which are also much cheaper than the restaurants inside the park. So my tip would be to plan a time to eat and make sure you're around the entrance to the park at that time so you can easily get to City Walk and then walk back into the park once you're finished dining. Okay. I guess I put this off long enough. It's time to talk about the worst ride in the park, and possibly the worst ride Universal has ever created, the Fast and the Furious Supercharged. Oh, where to begin? I guess I'll start by giving a summary of the ride, and then explain why it's so horrible. The ride is a simulated car race through San Francisco aboard a party bus. Guests enter the attraction, which is themed to be a deserted warehouse and the hidden home to the Torito family. The queue wraps around cars Dom won from his street races as they await their supercharging. Inside the break room, guests learn Dom has won yet another race, and we are invited to the party. Oh boy, lucky us. Careful though, the FBI and rival racer Owen Shaw are hot on the heels of Dom. Guests board custom party buses with lights and music to travel to the remote party. Despite keeping a low profile, the FBI crashed the party, and Shaw is revealed to be hot on our heels. The family helps us escape, as our buses are then pulled through San Francisco on a turbocharged tow truck. Yes, that's right, I said tow truck. Avoiding traps, traffic, and rival racers. After a drawbridge jump to safety, guests disembark as part of the family. So, why is this ride so bad? I could go on for hours giving reasons why. There's no 3D, the party scene does not fit at all with the franchise, the story is confusing as hell.
24 hours later.
It's just bad, horrible, confusing. Sorry that took so long, everyone, but there's just so many reasons why this attraction is so bad. With that explanation taking hours, let me just quickly summarize my top reasons. First, the show building. I mean, there is no theming to it at all. It's just a bland warehouse. Good theme park attractions have eye-catching show buildings. Just look at Revenge of the Mummy, for example. It screams theming. This screams blandness. Second, the overall story of the ride is really confusing. I literally did not understand it until I watched a YouTube video on it after riding the attraction. Third, no 3D. I mean, the screen technology is cool and all, but Skull Island Reign of Kong does the same thing over at Islands of Adventure, but with 3D. It's just not a good attraction, and this is a definite skip on every visit to the park. Although, I will make this prediction right now. This ride will become famous for being so bad, much like Alien Encounter did at Magic Kingdom. Now, with that absolute disaster over with, we can move on to the best part of the park, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Diagon Alley. Part of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter expansion, which I mentioned earlier in this video, which encompasses both parks, it is the most immersive theme park land anywhere in the world. Guests first come to a facade of London complete with red phone booths. You can see number 12 Grimmauld Place with Creature peeking through the window. In the London street is a night bus. And across the street is a leaky cauldron. This is another great dining location featuring traditional British food like fish and chips, toad in the hole, fisherman's pie, and more. It is themed to look exactly as it does in the movies. I mean, the theming alone make this an excellent place to eat during your visit, and the fish and chips is excellent. If you're a Harry Potter fan, I highly recommend eating here at least once. Now, as all of us witches and wizards know, the only correct way to enter Diagon Alley is through the secret passage behind the leaky cauldron, just like Hagrid and Harry did in the books and movies. When you exit the passage, you will be absolutely blown away. Gringotts, in its famous crooked architecture, towers overhead, complete with a fire-breathing dragon perched on top. All the shops from the films make appearances, including Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, quality Quidditch supplies, Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, and even Ollivanders, complete with a wand show, which sees a wand choose a guest, just like what happens in the franchise. It even includes Nocturne Alley, which is shrouded in darkness, and includes the infamous Dark Wizard Shop, Borgin and Burke's. Me and my wife are both huge Harry Potter fans, and the first time we stepped into Diagon Alley, we were completely blown away. It's that incredible and that immersive. It is really as if you have just walked into the Harry Potter universe. The two rides featured here are the Hogwarts Express train ride, which sees guests walk into King's Cross Station, go through platform 9 3/4, and ride the Hogwarts Express, complete with an in-ride attraction where guests see Fred, George, Harry, Hermione, and even experience the peril of a Dementor as they are transported to Hogsmeade at Islands of Adventure. This ride does require a park-to-park ticket in order to experience, and it is the absolute best way to travel between the parks. On our last visit, we went on this attraction twice, and honestly, we could have gone on it twice more. It's that much fun, and is well worth getting a park-to-park ticket in order to experience. The premier attraction at Diagon Alley is Escape from Gringotts. This ride takes you on an epic journey into the Gringotts Bank and into the vaults in order to retrieve an item with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The queue is one of the most detailed queue lines you will ever see in any theme park, possibly only topped by Harry Potter: The Forbidden Journey over at Islands of Adventure. It takes guests into the main lobby of the bank, where you can see lifelike animatronics of goblins working as bankers, just as seen in the books and films. After picking up your cart goggles and passing through what seems to be the office area of Gringotts, which features Harry, Ron, and Hermione talking to Griphook, you come to a hall in front of 3 statues of goblins with a closed door to your right. Once the doors have magically swung open, you advance into what seems to be an office. Waiting in this office, ushering you in, is none other than Blordak, the goblin who will accompany you down to the new vaults. Blordak is looking for the keys just as Bill Weasley enters the room. After summoning the keys for Blordak, Bill decides that he will also accompany you on your cart ride. As you exit Bill's office, you enter another room in which you wait for a lift as a goblin in a portrait gives you a safety briefing. Upon entering the lift, you begin your descent 9 miles below the surface. Once you have climbed a spiral staircase to the loading station, you enter a cart and the ride starts. After guests board their cart, the vehicle races along the tracks, just before security alarms go off as a security breach is detected and the bank goes on lockdown. Bellatrix Lestrange appears after being notified of an imposter infiltration and decides to torture the guests by cutting off the track and tilting it. This sends the cart speeding towards the vaults, as stalagmites can be seen to give an impression of being underground. Bill Weasley casts Arresto Momentum to stop the cart just before Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Griphook emerge from the thief's downfall, which has washed away the Polyjuice Potion's effects off of Hermione. Their cart then drops them from a high altitude as security trolls climb up, pushing Bill and Blordak off their cart. A security troll then pushes the guest cart further past the thief's downfall and stops in front of more security trolls. One of them is hit by a mace, but hangs onto the guest cart and sends them falling. Bill casts Arresto Momentum again in order to stop the cart from falling, followed by Wingardium Leviosa, sending guests through the vaults. Meanwhile, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are attempting to escape the vaults on the Ukrainian Iron Belly. Blordak urges the guests to seek shelter inside one of the vaults. After entering the vault, the walls come crashing down and Nagini appears in an attempt to attack guests. Bellatrix reappears, this time with Lord Voldemort, who confronts guests, questioning them on their knowledge of Harry Potter's whereabouts. He blames Bellatrix for the vault infiltration, who again decides to torture guests, sending them into a lava-filled chamber deep in the vaults. To further torture guests into revealing Harry Potter's whereabouts, Voldemort decides to administer a little dose of pain in order to help you remember, and conjures a ball of fire. The Ukrainian Iron Belly crashes in from the opposite side, and Harry casts a counterspell while the dragon spits fire towards Voldemort, who shields himself and Bellatrix, and both later furiously retreat. Hermione casts a spell to hook the cart to the dragon in order to get guests safely out of the vaults, and Ron casts Confringo to create an escape route. In the final scene, Harry asks Bill to take care of the guests as he acknowledges the retrieval of the Horcrux, which is the item that went unmentioned in the beginning, and Bill bids the guests farewell. Absolutely phenomenal. This ride is excellent. The 3D effects are amazing, combined with it being a decent indoor roller coaster on its own, make this one of the best rides you can experience anywhere in the world. The theming, the story, the effects, and the incredibly detailed queue line make this attraction an absolute must-ride on every visit to the park. This attraction replaced Jaws, and it is a more than worthy replacement of that iconic ride. That's the quickest overview I could give of Diagon Alley. In future videos, I'll cover the themed lands across the parks, and when I do, the video for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter will obviously cover Diagon Alley in much greater detail. Leaving Diagon Alley and continuing along the path to the right, guests will arrive at the World Expo. The only attraction here is Men in Black Alien Attack. It is at this point, guys, where I have to correct statements I made in previous videos. Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin was actually the first of this ride concept, opening in 1998, with this ride opening second in 2000. I know, go ahead and boo me. Hey, I'm new to making YouTube videos. What'd you expect? Perfection? Anyways, much like Space Ranger Spin, it is an interactive shooting dark ride which sees guests going through a training course to become potential MIB agents. It features 127 animatronics and is overall a lot of fun, but presently, the attraction is dated as Disney World evolved this ride concept with Toy Story Mania in Hollywood Studios, adding a 3D element to the ride, making it much more immersive. Continuing on from World Expo, guests will arrive in Springfield, USA, bringing the hit animated sitcom The Simpsons to life. The area includes a Quickie Mart, Moe's Tavern, Krusty Burger, and other locations found in the series. The area also has two attractions, Kang and Judo's Twirl and Hurl, which we won't discuss here as it is just an average aerotop jet ride, which you can see plenty of examples of in theme parks throughout the country, and the second attraction is the Simpsons ride. This is the ride which replaced the Back to the Future motion simulator, and man, is it ever a worthy replacement. Guests enter a show building themed as Krusty Land through a giant Krusty the Clown head and enter the queue. Following two pre-shows, guests board a Krusty themed vehicle. The ride simulator combines physical movement of the vehicle with on-screen motion. The experience continues with riders emerging onto a track with the Simpsons vehicle in front of them. The riders then ram into the Simpsons vehicle, which can be seen taking a plunge. The rider's vehicle plunges soon after. Homer, who wasn't sitting down, gets hit by a wrecking ball controlled by Sideshow Bob before it smashes into the track. With a portion of the track now missing, the riders fly into a different part of the coaster's layout before the steel wrecking ball breaks free from its cable and rolls along the track, chasing Homer and the riders. Riders end up on the park's Happy Little Elves in Pandaland attraction, with Bart and Lisa landing in separate ride vehicles, where Bob appears in control of an evil robotic panda that smashes some nearby singing elves out of annoyance. He then forces the ride vehicles in reverse, sending them crashing through the attraction, causing riders to catapult to another attraction called Captain Dinosaur's Pirate Ripoff. Homer and Marge are seen riding a boat. Sideshow Bob appears in a projection, telling Homer to resist temptations inside. Homer grabs a barrel of beer, while Marge attempts to warn Homer that it's a temptation. His actions trigger a trap, which destroys their surroundings, transporting them to Krusty's wet and smoky stunt show, running over a popcorn seller in the process. The panda robot can be still seen under Bob's control. Homer and Marge escape with Bart as Lisa appears riding a killer whale. She lassos the rider's vehicle and follows her family. After a series of jumping ramps, the group fly through a tipping metal water tower, where they crash at the edge of the attraction and encounter Bob again, who cuts a large hole into hell with a buzzsaw. Maggie, now giant-sized from the effects of the reactor room, reappears and grabs Bob, causing his robotic panda to fall into the hole. She slams him into the rider's vehicle, which almost plummets into the hole before it is saved by Professor Frink, flying a high-tech helicopter. Bob steals Maggie's pacifier and tells her that if she wants it back, she must destroy Springfield. Riders then fly through Springfield attached to the helicopter. An army converges around Maggie, while the Simpsons drive across town in a stolen Krusty Land tour tram vehicle. The riders then encounter Maggie again, who mistakes their car for a new pacifier, sucking on it repeatedly and separating riders from Frink in the process, as Maggie spits them out onto power lines, which catapults them into the Simpsons' house by crashing through the front door just after the Simpsons have arrived. Now sitting on their couch, the family is relieved to be back home. Suddenly, Kang and Kudo turn the house into Krusty's Death Drop ride. Riders are then dropped with the Simpsons from the sky, encountering various Simpsons characters along the way. Riders crash back at the entrance to Krusty Land, where Bob prepares to kill them with a buzzsaw. However, the couch the Simpsons are sitting on crushes and presumably kills him, followed by the Simpsons landing on top of it and Bob. Maggie appears and ends the ride by pushing down a large Krusty head sign directly over the Simpsons. The vehicle calmly lowers back down while mist, fire, and smoke effects spray. Continuing up the path, guests will arrive at the next land of the park, Woody Woodpecker's Kid Zone. Only one attraction is really worth mentioning here, and that is the iconic E.T. Adventure. An opening day attraction with the park, it is the only opening day attraction still remaining. According to rumors, Steven Spielberg will not allow this ride to close, as for him, it represents one of his favorite creations of all time, E.T. Guests enter a queue themed to a forest setting. The smell of this attraction has always been very distinctive and is one of the first things people remember about the attraction. An animatronic Botanicus periodically emerges from behind a thick plume of fog and lighting effects, pleading for E.T.'s return. Along the line queue, guests pass by the communications device E.T. constructed in the film to phone home, complete with a speak and spell prop that displays the letters "Help E.T." one at a time. Somewhat more hidden within the queue is an animatronic rabbit referencing the one that appears in the film's opening. Another rare sighting is a visual of E.T.'s glowing red heart moving through the trees, simulating a run through the forest. The queue ends at the loading platform where guests board the ride vehicles. Each individual seat is a bicycle whose handles come down as lap bars. The bike in the middle of the front row contains E.T. However, in the attraction's early years, guests also had the option of riding in a spaceship modeled after the one that E.T. came to Earth on in the film. These ride vehicles were removed as guests preferred to ride on the bikes, given how iconic they were in the famous flying scene in the movie. The vehicles travel past NASA and police officials who give chase and try to arrest the riders and capture E.T. As they are about to get caught, a police car appears out of nowhere, and just as they are about to hit it, the bicycles begin to fly over the city and then into outer space. From their bikes, the guests can see a miniature city below, including real moving cars, and even a football stadium and 2 baseball fields. The bikes are then transported to a kind of portal area with flashing lights, which, when finally turned around, arrive at the Green Planet. The guests then encounter Botanicus, who urges the visitors to save E.T.'s friends. E.T.'s healing touch travels through the Green Planet, reviving his friends and beginning a celebration with numerous baby E.T.s frolicking and playing. This lasts for about 3 minutes and is a huge contrast to the beginning. The beginning of the ride is dark and scary, while this part of the ride is light and colorful, with spurting water and singing. At the end, the guests pass an animatronic ET who thanks them all by the names that they gave to the travel agents in the beginning of the attraction. I will backtrack that a bit by saying that on my last visit, the names of the guests were not said. I'm not sure if that was due to COVID or if it was a temporary glitch. I have not found any information on that, so if anyone knows for sure, let me know in the comments section. This is one of the most iconic rides at the park, and while I won't say it's an absolute must ride, it is an attraction that is fun to ride, if only for the nostalgia of the original park, which opened in 1990. After E.T., continuing up the path, guests will arrive in the Hollywood section of the park. Here, you will find the only show which opened with the park that still exists, the Universal Orlando Horror Makeup Show, which uses humor to explain how many of the makeup effects and special effects are done in horror films. It is very entertaining, and if you have the time, I would recommend checking this show out. But it is overshadowed by the must-see show in this area of the park. Hollywood is also home to Mel's Drive-In, which is a classic Hollywood throwback diner that opened with the park. Serving classic diner food like burgers, fries, and shakes, it is known for the classic cars parked in the diner's parking lot. It's not a place I frequently eat at when at the park. I mean, I have once or twice, and the food was really good. I just feel there are better dining options elsewhere in the park and in City Walk. This now brings us to the last attraction we will cover at the park, and the best show at not only this park, but possibly any of the parks within Orlando, rivaling even Fantasmic, the Bourne Stuntacular. This show blurs the lines of reality between screens and live action. Based off the hit film franchise, it follows Jason Bourne as he's pursued by multiple characters across 3 continents and includes fight scenes, chase scenes, and acrobatic stunts. It blends projection mapping and moving scenes with pinpoint accuracy, automatic vehicle tracking scenes, moving set pieces, and much more. Honestly, guys, this is one of the best shows you will experience anywhere in the world. You can never tell what is happening live or what is happening on screen. Replacing Terminator 2 3D is a more than worthy replacement of that iconic show, even though it removed the element of 3D. The technology alone makes this an absolute must-see on every visit to the park. I literally cannot tell you how good this show is in words. You just have to experience it for yourself. And that brings us to the end of the video. Universal Studios went from a long-shot theme park that nearly failed from the start to the ultimate competitor to Disney World. Alongside Islands of Adventure, Universal Orlando Resort, in many ways, has even surpassed Disney World in regards to attraction quality. Sure, there are those loyal Disney fans who will never step foot in Universal, and there are those loyal Universal fans who will never step foot in Disney World. So many people go around asking, are you a Disney person? Are you a Universal person? My answer is, I am an I want to have fun person, and both resorts provide different experiences, which are fun in different ways. Disney has those legendary rides, like Pirates of the Caribbean, Space Mountain, and also newer attractions, like Rise of the Resistance. Universal, on the other hand, isn't afraid to update, retheme, and change older attractions. Sometimes it works out, other times it doesn't, but both resorts give different experiences, which are equally enjoyable. So with that said, please remember to like and subscribe if you liked this video. And if you enjoyed this video, I know you will enjoy these videos too. Thanks for watching, everyone.